Happy holidays, scrumptious hunks. Alright, so it's very much occurred to me that for a Transformers review channel, I've so far only made 3 videos on toys from the Michael Bay movies. And considering how, like it or not, it is what brought Transformers back to life for the 21st century, that's probably a bit of an oversight on my part. So today let's visit a stunning soldier who serenaded our sights from the silver screen. It's movie 2007 Voyager Optimus Prime.
Sorry, my bad.
I'll begin by showing off the truck mode, because it's my channel and I get to call the shots. Something that's worth noting is that this is the RoboVision variant. What does that mean? I don't know. But some of the paint is ever so slightly different, sporting a sharp, stunning silver where the original toy used a basic gray. It gives the toy a wee bit more of a pop to it. And as tends to be the case for Movieverse toys, the vehicle mode looks nothing short of awesome. Seriously, for a plastic presentation of this powerful Peterbilt, it's practically perfect. The silver paint looks amazing with a ton of attention given to the very front. Not only is the sculpt of the grille insane, but they even added little clear blue plastic pieces for the headlights. And let's not forget the proud and slightly off-center Autobot symbol. Plus, this is one of the only Optimus Prime toys to have a relatively clean back section. Sure, it looks a little garbled directly behind the cab, but I can forgive that. Now, in terms of features, you'll notice that driving the truck is a little tiny person. This is actually built into the toy, which isn't really something you see very often. But when you painfully open the door, the person magically disappears into the dark dimension. The gimmick only works like 40% of the time, but I'm glad they included it, even if it is pretty pointless in the grand scheme of things. There's also an attack mode for the truck, changing the smokestacks and fuel tanks into this freaky front-facing fiasco. It'd be completely useless if the baddies were attacking from the side, but it looks much better than most vehicle attack modes do in Transformers. So when it comes down to it, this is a pretty spectacular truck mode. It's so good, I'm kind of rendered with not much to say about it, really. I mean, its job is to look like a good representation of the truck in the film, and for me at least, it succeeds. It does what it has to in being a truck, plus it dwarfs and in some ways even surpasses the Studio Series Optimus Prime truck mode from a decade later. Despite that though, I still think the Studio Series Prime is the best Voyager version of this character for reasons I'll touch on soon. But as for the alt mode, it rolls out in style. Get it? Cause it's Optimus Prime. The transformation is interesting. There's some intrigue in the fact that this was one of the first ever toys of the Bayverse Prime. So this was before Hasbro really knew how to pin down where everything should go and how it should look. Like the entire upper half barely changes and the legs are doing most of the work. But I suppose there's some novelty in the uniqueness, and the automorph in the legs is actually pretty fun. And this is where the illusion starts to shatter. Look at this doof! What, did he take fashion tips from Huffer? There is exactly one step in the transformation that's keeping his back from looking like a whole front half of a truck. Still though, at least the sculpting looks pretty nice for the most part. It's got what it needs, where it needs it. Although there is the odd area that looks more like melted candle wax rather than the precise robo detailing mainly on display. His lower legs are rather interesting, in that his entire shins look like his CG model's knees. That's definitely a choice. And the feet? Are those supposed to be his toes? They look more like several peeps clumped into one. And look, I'm definitely not one to complain about faux parts. Oftentimes faux parts comes with an interesting level of engineering with a creative result. However, I think this might just be overdoing it for me. I think it's the fact that basically nothing in the torso area moves in a clever way to achieve this aesthetic, unlike with the Studio Series figure. I can't really fault the way it looks though. It is pretty movie accurate. And the head looks perfectly passable as well. Not as great as we would have gotten later, but this is still good. I especially think the light piping works wonders here. The colors throughout are super appealing. The very particular shade of red and blue along with the silver, it makes it look so attractive and suave, like an Autobot oughta look. You can remove the fuel tanks from earlier to make these rifles that he definitely didn't have in the movie. I suppose they do what they must, fulfilling the basic task of looking like a robot weapon. Also, they have some pretty decent firing action. Although one of his arms doesn't seem too enthused to support the very light weight of this thing. Whenever he's not flailing these about, these can be stored on his back here, because his backpack wasn't big enough, I guess. The range of motion is pretty good. Sure, he doesn't have waist rotation or ankle tilt, but I won't hold that against him too much, since the rest of him is pretty versatile. However, I don't like how his shoulders don't peg into his torso. They just flail about to give him this faux butterfly joint. That's one of those details that by all means should be small, but does kinda bother me a bit. And on that very satisfying conclusion of the summary of his robot mode, I don't know if I can say that this is a quality Transformer by today's standards. This might actually be one of the goofiest, most underwhelming, unremarkable Optimus Prime toys ever made, at least relative to its price point. And yet, somehow, I absolutely can't dislike it. Because now that we've had so many other better Movieverse Optimus Prime toys, that context transforms this toy into more than just a toy, but a piece of history for the series. Plus, when I was young, I had the Revenge of the Fallen version of this toy, and I loved it then, and a part of me still does. Back then, I never confronted words like parts count, or parts forming, or faux parts, or parts. And several inaccuracies of this toy didn't really get to me because all I cared about back then was it being a good toy. And to me, I think that's one of the most pure forms of enjoyment that a toy can give someone. I guess what I'm coming at here is that if a child version of me really liked this, then a child somewhere else who isn't me should also like this. It's well built, the quality control is nice, the colors look good, the articulation's respectable, the alt mode is genuinely really good. So if this is really one of the weakest of the movie Prime toys, I say we're doing really good. So I really hope you lot are having a nice, safe, and bodacious holiday season. And please, be respectful to each other.